The spring runoff of 1878 had turned the Rio Grande into a roaring beast, and Clara Bennett stood at its muddy banks, feeling her courage drain away like water through a sieve. She had traveled from St. Louis to the New Mexico territory with nothing but a worn carpetbag and a letter from her aunt promising work at a boarding house in Santa Fe, but the stagecoach had only taken her as far as the settlement of Las Cruces. Now she stood with a dozen other travelers, all waiting for someone brave enough or foolish enough to guide them across the swollen river to continue north. The water churned brown and violent, carrying broken branches and debris from the mountain snowmelt. Clara's hands trembled as she clutched her bag tighter, watching the current twist and foam against the rocks. "We will cross at first light," announced the wagon master, a grizzled man named Hutchins who smelled of whiskey and tobacco. "Anyone too scared can wait here until summer when the water calms, but that is 3 months away." Clara swallowed hard. She had barely enough money for food, let alone lodging for 3 months. Her aunt's letter had been clear that the position would not wait indefinitely. She had to cross tomorrow, fear or no fear. That evening, as she sat by the campfire picking at a plate of beans, a shadow fell across her. She looked up to find a tall cowboy standing there, hat in his hands, dark hair falling across his forehead. He had the kind of face that looked stern until he smiled, which he did just then, and Clara felt something flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with fear of the river. "Ma'am," he said, his voice a low rumble that reminded her of distant thunder. "Name is Jack Thornton. I could not help but notice you seem worried about tomorrow's crossing." Clara bristled slightly, her pride stung. "I am perfectly capable of managing, thank you." His smile widened, showing white teeth. "Did not mean to suggest otherwise. Just wanted you to know that I have crossed this river maybe 50 times in the past 5 years. I know where the current is strongest, where the bottom is most solid. If you would like, you could cross with me and my horse. He is steady, and I promise you will make it across safely." She wanted to refuse, to prove she needed no help from anyone. But the river's roar seemed to grow louder in her ears, mocking her false bravado. "Why would you help me?" Jack shrugged, settling his hat back on his head. "Because someone once helped me when I needed it. Because it is the right thing to do. Because you look like you have somewhere important to be, and it would be a shame if the river stopped you from getting there." Clara studied his face in the firelight, searching for any sign of dishonesty or ulterior motive. She found only open sincerity in his brown eyes. "All right," she said quietly. "Thank you, Mr. Thornton." "Jack," he corrected. "We will be holding tight to each other tomorrow, so we might as well be on friendly terms." Her cheeks warmed at the thought, but she nodded. "Clara?" "Pleased to meet you properly, Clara." He tipped his hat and walked back to where his gear was laid out on the far side of camp. She barely slept that night, listening to the river's constant roar, imagining 100 ways the crossing could go wrong. When dawn finally broke gray and cold over the desert, she felt hollow with exhaustion and dread. The other travelers gathered their belongings, loading wagons and saddling horses. Hutchins shouted orders, organizing people into groups. Jack appeared at Clara's side, leading a massive roan horse that stood at least 16 hands high. "This is Rusty," Jack said, patting the horse's neck. "He has carried me through worse than this." Clara eyed the animal nervously. "I have not ridden much." "You will not have to. I will do the riding, you just hold on." He swung up into the saddle with easy grace, then extended his hand down to her. "Come on. We will wait until a few wagons go first, see how the current is running today." She grasped his hand, surprised by the strength in it as he pulled her up behind him in one smooth motion. She had no choice but to wrap her arms around his waist, feeling the solid warmth of him through his shirt. Her carpetbag was tied securely behind the saddle. "You all right back there?" Jack asked, glancing over his shoulder. "Yes," she managed, though her heart was already racing. They watched as the first wagon entered the water, pulled by 4 straining oxen. The current immediately caught the wagon, tilting it sideways. The driver shouted and cracked his whip, and the oxen pulled harder, fighting their way across. Water rushed up to the wagon bed, and Clara heard a woman inside scream, but the oxen found their footing on the far bank and hauled the wagon up and out, water streaming from the wheels. "See?" Jack said. "They made it." "They nearly tipped," Clara said, her voice tight. "But they did not. That is what matters." He patted her hand where it gripped his shirt. "Trust me, I will get you across." 2 more wagons crossed, both making it but both struggling against the vicious current. Then Hutchins waved the riders forward. Jack squeezed Rusty with his knees, and the big horse stepped toward the water. "Wait," Clara said suddenly. "Maybe I should wait. Maybe I can find another way." Jack twisted in the saddle to look at her fully. "There is no other way, not for 100 miles in either direction, and you said yourself you need to get to Santa Fe." "I know, but I cannot swim. And if we fall in, I will drown, and Hey!" His voice was gentle but firm. "Look at me, Clara." She met his eyes, seeing nothing but steady confidence there. "I will not let you fall, do you understand? I will hold you through every wave, every bit of current. You will not drown. I promise you that on my life." Something in his voice, in his eyes, steadied her. She took a shaking breath and nodded. "All right. Hold tight now." Rusty stepped into the water, and Clara gasped as the cold shock of it hit her legs. The water rose quickly up to the horse's chest, and she felt the current grab at them like invisible hands trying to pull them downstream. Rusty stumbled slightly, and Clara's arms tightened around Jack's waist so hard she thought she might crack his ribs. "Easy," Jack murmured, though she was not sure if he was talking to her or the horse. "Easy now." The water rose higher, soaking her skirts, so cold it made her legs ache. The current pushed, and Rusty had to fight for every step. Clara buried her face against Jack's back, squeezing her eyes shut. "You are doing great," Jack called back to her. "We are almost a quarter of the way across." A quarter. They were only a quarter of the way. Clara felt tears prick her eyes, but she refused to cry. She had not come all the way from St. Louis to die in a river in New Mexico. A large branch came rushing toward them, spinning in the current. Jack saw it and guided Rusty to the side, letting it pass inches from the horse's shoulder. The near miss made Clara's breath catch in her throat. "You are all right," Jack said firmly. "I have got you." The water grew even deeper, and for a terrifying moment Rusty lost his footing completely. Clara felt them tilt, felt the horse thrashing, and she knew they were going to fall. She opened her mouth to scream, but Jack's hand came down and covered both of hers, clasped at his waist. "Hold on!" he shouted. Rusty found the bottom again, his powerful legs driving them forward. The current tried to sweep them downstream, but Jack kept the horse pointed across, kept him moving, kept them upright through sheer skill and determination. "Halfway!" Jack called. "Halfway, Clara!" She could not respond, could barely breathe. The water roared in her ears, spraying up and soaking her completely. She was so cold, so terrified, but Jack's hand stayed over hers, warm and solid and real. Another wave crashed over them, and Clara choked on the water that filled her mouth and nose. She coughed and sputtered, her grip loosening for just a second. "Do not let go," Jack commanded, and she obeyed, tightening her arms again. The horse was tiring now. She could feel it in the way he moved, in the heaving of his sides. But the far bank was closer now, so close she could see the people who had already crossed standing there watching, their faces anxious. "Come on, Rusty, gee," Jack urged. "Come on, boy, you can do this." The horse surged forward, giving everything he had. The water began to shallow, dropping from his chest to his belly to his knees. Clara felt the current's grip loosen, felt solid ground beneath them again, and suddenly they were climbing up the bank, water streaming from them, and they were across. Jack did not stop until they were well away from the river's edge. Then he pulled Rusty to a halt and dismounted in a hurry, reaching up for Clara. Her legs would not work right. They were numb from cold and shaking from fear. She half fell into his arms, and he caught her, holding her steady. "You did it," he said, his face breaking into a grin. "Clara, you did it." "We did it," she corrected, her teeth chattering so hard she could barely speak. "You saved my life." "I told you I would get you across." He grabbed a blanket from his saddle roll and wrapped it around her shoulders. "You need to get warm. There is a town about 5 miles north. We can get you some hot coffee and dry clothes there." She nodded, still shaking, still trying to process that she was alive, that she had made it. Other riders were coming up out of the river now, and everyone was talking and laughing with the relief of having survived. Jack helped her back onto Rusty, then mounted in front of her again. This time, when she wrapped her arms around him, it felt different. It felt like gratitude and something else, something she was not quite ready to name. The town Jack had mentioned was barely more than a collection of adobe buildings clustered around a dusty plaza, but it had a cantina with a fire and hot food. Jack got Clara settled at a table near the hearth, then brought her coffee and a plate of stew. "Eat," he said. "You will feel better." She obeyed, and he was right. The hot food and the warmth of the fire slowly brought feeling back to her limbs and calmed her shaking. Jack sat across from her, drinking his own coffee, watching her with those steady brown eyes. "Thank you," she said finally. "I do not know how to properly express my gratitude. You did not have to help me, but you did, and I will never forget it." "It was nothing," he said, but she shook her head. "It was everything. I would have tried to cross on my own and likely drowned. You saved me." He looked uncomfortable with the praise, shifting in his chair. "Where are you headed, if you do not mind me asking? You said Santa Fe?" "Yes, my aunt runs a boarding house there. She offered me a position helping her manage it. That is still 2 days' ride from here. How are you planning to get there?" Clara bit her lip. "I was hoping to find a wagon train or another stage heading north." "There is a freight wagon leaving tomorrow morning," Jack said slowly. "The driver might let you ride along if you ask." "And you?" The question was out before she could stop it. "Where are you going?" He smiled slightly. "I work on a ranch about 30 miles north of Santa Fe. I have been down in Texas buying cattle, and now I'm bringing them home. They are waiting at a holding pen about 10 miles from here." "So you will be going through Santa Fe as well?" "I will be." Their eyes met across the table, and something passed between them, something that made Clara's heart speed up in a way that had nothing to do with fear. "Perhaps," she said carefully, "I could travel with you and your cattle, if that would not be an imposition." Jack's smile widened. "I would like that. Though I should warn you, driving cattle is dusty, dirty work, and we will be moving slow." After that river crossing, slow sounds perfect. They left the next morning, Clara riding behind Jack on Rusty again, though this time there was no terror involved, only the pleasant warmth of the sun and the rhythm of the horse's steady gait. Jack's cattle, 40 head of sturdy range cows, moved ahead of them, guided by 2 ranch hands Jack had hired in Texas. The landscape was harsh and beautiful, all red rocks and endless sky. Clara had never seen country like this, so different from the green hills of Missouri. Jack told her about the land, pointing out mesas and describing how the desert bloomed after the rare rains. He told her about the ranch he worked for, the 3 bars owned by a man named Garrett who treated his workers fairly and paid decent wages. "Have you worked there long?" Clara asked. Jack nodded. 5 years now. I started as a regular hand, but Garrett promoted me to foreman last year. It is good work, hard but honest. Do you ever think about having your own ranch?" "Every day," Jack admitted. "I've been saving money looking for the right piece of land. There is a valley about 15 miles from the 3 bars that I have my eye on. Good water, good grass. Someday I will make an offer on it." Clara heard the longing in his voice, the dream he carried. "I hope you get it," she said sincerely. "What about you?" he asked. "Is managing a boarding house what you want to do?" She was quiet for a moment, thinking. "Honestly, I do not know. It is better than what I had in St. Louis, which was a job in a shirt factory that barely paid enough to live on. My aunt's offer was a chance to start over, to have a better life. But what I really want, she paused, I suppose I want what most people want, a home, a family, to belong somewhere. Jack did not respond, but she felt something shift in the way he sat in the saddle, in the air between them. They camped that night under a sky so full of stars it looked like someone had spilled diamonds across black velvet. The ranch hands, a young Mexican man named Carlos and a grizzled former soldier named Pike, set up camp and got the cattle settled while Jack built a fire and made coffee. Clara helped as best she could, though she was learning that cowboy life required skills she did not have. Still, Jack was patient, showing her how to arrange the wood for the fire, how to brew coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in. "You are a good teacher," she said as they sat by the fire eating beans and hardtack. Jack shrugged. "I had good teachers when I was starting out, only fair to pass it along." "Tell me about your family," Clara said. "Do they live around here?" His expression clouded slightly. "My parents had a farm in Kansas. They died of fever when I was 16. I have been on my own since then, drifting west, taking work where I could find it." "I am sorry," Clara said softly. "I lost my parents too, though I was younger. My mother died when I was born, and my father when I was 12. I lived with different relatives after that, never really fitting in anywhere. Sounds like we both know what it is like to be alone." "Yes," Clara agreed. Then more quietly, "Though I do not feel so alone right now." Jack's eyes found hers across the fire, and the intensity in them made her breath catch. "Neither do I," he said. Carlos pulled out a guitar after dinner and began playing soft melodies that drifted up into the night sky. Pike told stories about his time in the cavalry, exaggerated tales that made everyone laugh. Clara felt something loosen in her chest, some tight knot of loneliness she had carried for so long she had forgotten it was there. When it was time to sleep, Jack set up Clara's bedroll away from the men, near enough to the fire to be warm, but with enough distance for propriety. He brought her an extra blanket and stood there awkwardly for a moment. "Thank you," Clara said, "for everything. This has been a much nicer journey than I expected." "The company helps," Jack said with a smile. "Sleep well, Clara. You too." But sleep was slow in coming. Clara lay on her back, watching the stars wheel overhead, thinking about the cowboy who had held her hand through the river's rushing waves, who had promised her safety and delivered on that promise. She thought about his dreams of his own ranch, about the kindness in his eyes, about the way her heart had started to beat differently whenever he was near. She was falling for him. The realization should have frightened her, but instead it felt right, like something that had been waiting to happen since the moment he had approached her by the campfire back in Las Cruces. The next day brought more riding, more dust, more endless sky. They stopped at midday to let the cattle rest and drink from a creek. Clara walked along the water's edge, enjoying the chance to stretch her legs. Jack came to join her, leading Rusty to drink. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "Better than I expected," Clara said honestly. "I thought I would hate this kind of travel, but there is something peaceful about it." "I know what you mean. Out here things are simple, clear. You know what needs to be done and you do it." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the water flow over the rocks. "Clara," Jack said suddenly, his voice serious, "I need to tell you something." She turned to him, her heart suddenly pounding. "What is it?" He removed his hat, turning it in his hands, not meeting her eyes. "I know we have only known each other a few days and you probably think I am crazy, but I have to say this before we get to Santa Fe and you disappear into your aunt's boarding house, and I go back to the ranch and maybe never see you again." "Jack, I like you," he said in a rush. "More than like you. I think about you all the time. The way you were so brave crossing that river, even though you were terrified. The way you laugh at Pike's terrible stories. The way you look at the sunset like you are seeing something holy. I know I do not have much to offer right now, just a foreman's wages and a dream of a ranch, but I would like to court you properly if you would let me." Clara's heart felt too big for her chest. Jack Thornton, I have been hoping you would say something like that since yesterday. His head snapped up, hope blazing in his eyes. Really? Really, she confirmed. I like you too. Very much. The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise. He closed the distance between them, taking her hands in his. So when we get to Santa Fe, I can come calling? Yes, Clara said, smiling so hard her cheeks hurt. You can come calling. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, but she did not want to. His lips met hers in a kiss that was gentle and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Clara felt dizzy in the best possible way. We should probably get back before Carlos and Pike start gossiping, Jack said, though he made no move to release her hands. Let them gossip, Clara said recklessly, and kissed him again. They reached Santa Fe late in the afternoon of the second day. The city sprawled across the high desert, adobe buildings glowing golden in the slanting light. The plaza was busy with merchants and locals, a mix of Spanish, Mexican, Anglo, and native voices creating a vibrant tapestry of sound. Jack helped Clara down from Rusty in front of a 2-story adobe building with a hand-painted sign that read Delgado's boarding house. This is it, Clara said, suddenly nervous. This is my aunt's place. It looks nice, Jack offered. They stood there awkwardly, neither wanting to say goodbye. Finally, Clara took a breath and knocked on the door. It opened to reveal a plump woman in her 50s with Clara's same hazel eyes and a warm smile. Clara, oh my dear girl, you made it. Come in, come in. She pulled Clara into a fierce hug, then noticed Jack standing there. And who is this handsome young man? Aunt Maria, this is Jack Thornton. He helped me cross the Rio Grande and escorted me safely here. Maria's eyes sharpened with interest. Did he now? Well, Mr. Thornton, you must come in for supper. It is the least we can do to thank you. I would not want to impose, Jack started, but Maria waved him off. Nonsense, I will not hear of it. Besides, you look like you could use a good meal and a bath, no offense. Jack laughed. None taken, ma'am. A good meal sounds wonderful. Maria's boarding house was warm and welcoming, full of comfortable furniture and the smell of cooking food. She showed Clara to a small but clean room on the second floor, chattering the whole time about the house and the boarders and all the work there was to do. Now you get cleaned up, Maria said, and come down for supper. We eat at 6. Clara washed away the dust of travel and changed into the one clean dress she had in her carpet bag. When she came downstairs, she found Jack at the big dining table, also cleaned up, his dark hair still damp. He smiled when he saw her, and her heart did that fluttering thing again. Supper was lively and loud, with half a dozen boarders sharing the table. Maria served pozole and fresh bread, and everyone talked over each other, sharing news and gossip. Jack fit right in, charming Maria and making the other boarders laugh with stories from the trail. After the meal, Clara walked Jack out to where Rusty was tied. Thank you for supper, Jack said. Your aunt is wonderful. She is, Clara agreed. I think I'm going to be happy here. Good. He took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. I meant what I said about courting you. I will be back in town this weekend. May I take you to dinner? I would like that very much. He kissed her hand, then mounted Rusty. Until Saturday, then. Until Saturday, Clara echoed, watching him ride away into the gathering dusk. The days until Saturday passed in a blur of learning her new duties at the boarding house. Maria put Clara to work immediately, teaching her how to manage the accounts, how to deal with suppliers, how to handle difficult boarders with firm kindness. Clara discovered she was good at it, better than she had expected. She liked the rhythm of the work, liked feeling useful and needed. But in the back of her mind, through all of it, was the thought of Jack. Jack riding through her dreams, Jack's smile, Jack's promise. When Saturday came, Clara changed into her best dress, a simple blue cotton that brought out her eyes. Maria helped her arrange her hair and then stood back with a satisfied nod. You look lovely, mija. This Jack, he is a good man? The best I've ever met, Clara said honestly. Then enjoy yourself. You deserve happiness." Jack arrived promptly at 6, wearing clean clothes and holding his hat. He looked nervous, which Clara found endearing. They walked to a restaurant near the plaza, a small place with good food and friendly service. Over enchiladas and wine, they talked about everything and nothing. Jack told her about getting the cattle settled at the ranch, about his plans for the coming weeks. Clara told him about learning the boarding house business, about the eccentric boarders, and her aunt's endless energy. "I have been thinking," Jack said as they finished their meal, "about that valley I mentioned, the one I want to buy." "The one with good water and grass?" "That is the one. I talked to the owner this week. He is willing to sell for a fair price. I have enough saved for a down payment, and I can pay the rest over time." Clara's heart leaped. "Jack, that is wonderful." "I have not made the offer yet," he said, his eyes locked on hers, "because before I do, I need to know something." "What?" He reached across the table and took her hand. "I need to know if you would be willing to share that dream with me. Not now. Not until we have courted properly and you are sure, but someday. Would you consider being my wife, Clara? Building a ranch and a life with me?" Tears pricked Clara's eyes. "Jack Thornton, are you proposing to me after knowing me for less than a week?" "I am asking if I should make an offer on that land," he said. "If I should start building a house there. If I should plan for a future that has you in it. The actual proposal will come later when the time is right, but I need to know if I'm crazy for hoping." "You are not crazy," Clara whispered. "Yes, Jack. Yes. I would be willing to share that dream. Yes, I can imagine being your wife. Yes to all of it." His smile was brilliant, and right there in the restaurant he stood and pulled her up and kissed her, not caring who was watching. Clara kissed him back, pouring all her hope and happiness into it. The next months were a whirlwind of activity. Jack made his offer on the land, and it was accepted. He began building a house there, working on weekends and evenings with help from his friends at the 3 Bars. Clara continued learning her role at the boarding house, but spent every free moment with Jack, riding out to see the progress on the house, planning what their life would look like. They courted properly with dinners and dances and walks through the plaza. Jack met all of Maria's friends and charmed them all. Clara visited the 3 Bars and met Garrett, who turned out to be a gruff but kind-hearted man who thought the world of Jack. "About time he found someone, Orimer," Garrett told Clara. "That boy works too hard. Needs someone to remind him there is more to life than cattle." 6 months after they met, on a crisp autumn evening, Jack took Clara out to the valley where his house now stood, a sturdy adobe structure with a wide porch and windows that looked out over the grassland. "It is finished," he said, pride evident in his voice, and "come see." He led her through the house, showing her each room. It was simple but well built, with a large kitchen, a cozy parlor, 2 bedrooms, and even a small study. "This could be for your sewing or whatever you want to use it for," Jack said, gesturing to the smaller bedroom. "Or it could be a nursery," Clara said softly. Jack turned to her, hope blazing in his eyes. "Or it could be a nursery," he agreed. They ended up on the porch, watching the sun set over the valley, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. "Clara," Jack said, turning to face her. He dropped to one knee, pulling a simple gold band from his pocket. "I know I already asked you in a roundabout way, but I want to do this properly. Clara Bennett, you are the bravest, kindest, most wonderful woman I have ever met. You held my heart from the moment I saw you scared by that river, and you have held it every day since. Will you marry me? Will you share this house and this life and all my tomorrows?" Clara was crying now, happy tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Jack, I will marry you." He slipped the ring on her finger and stood sweeping her into his arms and spinning her around while she laughed and cried at the same time. They were married in December in a small ceremony at the church in Santa Fe. Maria cried through the whole thing. Garrett stood up as Jack's best man, and half the town seemed to turn out to wish them well. Clara wore a white dress that Maria helped her sew, and Jack wore a new suit that made him look dashingly handsome. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, Jack kissed Clara like it was the only thing in the world that mattered, and for Clara, in that moment, it was. They moved into the house in the valley, and Clara discovered that ranch life suited her far better than she had expected. She learned to cook over a wood stove, to tend a vegetable garden, to help Jack with the cattle when he needed an extra hand. It was hard work, but it was satisfying in a way her factory job in St. Louis had never been. Jack proved to be everything she had hoped for in a husband. He was patient and kind, making her laugh even on difficult days. He never dismissed her opinions, always asked what she thought about decisions regarding the ranch. He held her every night like she was precious, and loved her with a tenderness that still took her breath away. A year after their marriage, Clara gave birth to a son they named Samuel. Jack cried when he held the baby for the first time, this tiny life they had created together. He was a devoted father, getting up in the night to help with feedings, singing off-key lullabies that made Clara smile. 2 years later came a daughter, Rose, with Clara's hazel eyes and Jack's dark hair. Then another son, Thomas, who had Jack's easy smile. The ranch grew and prospered. Jack proved to have a gift for raising quality cattle, and soon ranchers from all over the territory were coming to buy his stock. They hired hands to help with the work, and Clara managed the books and the household with quiet efficiency. Maria visited often, delighting in her great-nieces and nephews. Garrett became like an uncle to the children, teaching them to ride almost before they could walk. One evening, 15 years after that fateful river crossing, Clara and Jack sat on their porch watching their children play in the yard. Samuel was nearly grown now, already talking about working the ranch full-time. Rose was 12, all long legs and fierce independence. Thomas was 10, full of mischief and questions. "Do you ever think about that day?" Clara asked, "the day we crossed the river?" Jack smiled, taking her hand and pressing it to his lips. "Every time I look at you, every time I count my blessings, I think about how terrified you were and how brave." "I was only brave because you were there," Clara said, "because you held my hand through every wave." "And I will keep holding your hand," Jack said softly, "through whatever comes. That is what I promised you that day, even if I did not say it out loud. To hold your hand through every rushing wave life throws at us." Clara leaned her head on his shoulder, watching their children, watching the sun set over the valley they had built their life in. She thought about the girl she had been, scared and alone, standing on the banks of that swollen river. She thought about the cowboy who had offered his hand and his help, asking nothing in return. She thought about how sometimes the most terrifying moments led to the most beautiful futures, if you were brave enough to take someone's hand and hold on tight. "I love you," she said to Jack, the words as true now as they had been the first time she said them. "I love you too," he replied, pressing a kiss to her hair. "Always and forever." In the yard, Samuel called to his younger siblings, starting a game of tag. Their laughter rang out across the valley, a sound of joy and home and family. Clara smiled, her heart full to bursting. This life, this man, these children, this home they had built together from nothing but hope and hard work and love. It was more than she had ever dreamed possible on that day she stood terrified by the river. But she had crossed that river. Jack had held her hand, just as he promised. And on the other side had been everything she had ever wanted, waiting for her to be brave enough to reach for it. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of fire, and Jack pulled Clara closer. They sat together in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, watching their children play as the stars began to emerge one by one in the darkening sky. It was a perfect moment in a life full of them, and Clara knew with absolute certainty that she would not change a single thing. Every fear, every struggle, every rushing wave had led her here, to this porch, to this man, to this beautiful life. And she had never been more grateful to have been brave enough to hold on tight and trust in the cowboy who had promised to see her safely across.